On the night I thought I was being honored for saving our family's business, my sister Laura raised a glass and said, "The vote's in. You're out." Just like that, the company I built, the land I secured, the deals I negotiated, all gone. No one defended me. Not my father. Not even my mother. They watched as I was erased with a toast. But they forgot something. I don't scream when I'm betrayed. I build. In silence. Before I continue my story, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button. If you've ever been sacrificed by the people who were supposed to protect you, stay with me. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this unfolds. When Lara raised her wine glass and smiled, "The vote's in. You're off the project." No one looked surprised. Not my mother, who adjusted her necklace and reached for more bread. Not my father, who sipped his water like he hadn't just signed off on cutting me out of our family legacy. And certainly not the two investors across the table who glanced at me with polite discomfort, like they were watching someone get fired during dessert. I sat frozen, still holding the proposal I had spent the last 6 months refining. Floor plans, zoning permits, environmental strategy, long-term ROI. All of it had my fingerprints on it. I had negotiated the city tax credits. I had found the land in the first place. This wasn't just business. It was my life's work. And Lara had just publicly stripped me of it with a toast. "We just felt," she continued, like she was offering me a backhanded compliment, "that your energy might be better spent elsewhere. Something less visible." I looked around the table, waiting for someone to speak up. Anyone, even a cough of protest. Nothing. Just that smug smile on Lara's face and the quiet clinking of silverware. I placed the proposal down slowly. "You already filed the new LLC, didn't you?" I asked. Lara's eyes flicked sideways for half a second. Confirmation. "We needed to move quickly," my father said. "You were distracted with Mom's health." I almost laughed. I had been the one taking her to every appointment, tracking meds, coordinating her aftercare. But I saw now what this really was. They had waited until I was exhausted, then cut me loose. "We can find a role for you," my mother offered softly, as if I should be grateful. "Liaison, maybe. Something internal." Translation: keep your head down, stay invisible, let your sister have the credit. Lara poured herself more wine. "You've always been more behind the scenes anyway, Vic. That's where you shine." That name, Vic. Like I was some interchangeable cog. Not the daughter who'd put her own career on pause to save theirs. I stood up. Not abruptly. Not in anger. I folded the proposal in half, then in half again, and set it beside my untouched plate. "I won't make a scene," I said, my voice calm. "But I want you to remember something. I saved this business twice, and you just threw that away." No one stopped me as I left. No one called after me. I stepped out into the night air, my hands shaking just slightly. And as the door clicked shut behind me, I felt it. The moment everything changed. Not with rage, not even sadness. Just the sharp, quiet certainty that I would never walk back into that house the same. They thought they'd removed me from the picture. But they didn't realize I was the one who had developed the frame. Before Lara ever showed up in heels and highlighter to take staged photos of the land we'd inherited from Grandpa, I was the one knee-deep in the mud, mapping out drainage issues and hauling out debris with my bare hands. After the real estate crash hit, our parents nearly lost everything, except I didn't let them. I left a job offer in Seattle, moved back to Montana, and turned our family's dying development firm into a sustainable housing project using federal land rehabilitation incentives. Lara called it too rustic when she visited, then posted drone shots like she'd discovered the concept herself. That was her gift. She could lie with a smile and turn any narrative in her favor. But while she flew in for brunches and Instagram reels, I was negotiating with town supervisors, filing permits, and sitting through hearings that went past midnight. When Mom's diagnosis came, I rearranged my life again. Hospitals in Billings, herbal regimens Lara never paid for, and home renovations to accommodate her recovery. My dad said I was too serious, that I should try yoga. But when Mom stabilized, they let Lara take over the client-facing side. I didn't argue. I just stayed up late reworking blueprints behind the scenes. The only person who saw through it all was Caleb. He wasn't part of the family. He was a local architect I hired to help with zoning compliance who never asked for credit but always asked the right questions. He saw the ghost work, the financials I patched, the silent sacrifices. We started sharing coffee, then hours, then plans. And when Lara began locking me out of meetings, Caleb said, "Why don't we build something for us?" I told him I couldn't, that I had responsibilities. He just nodded. "But who has responsibilities to you?" I didn't have an answer. Then, last fall, a woman named Isabel came into the office, just a local clerk from the town hall, but her words hit like a bolt. "Victoria, did you mean to file 2 separate land improvement permits under different LLC names with the same tax ID?" I froze. "What are you talking about?" She pulled out paperwork. 2 LLCs, one mine, one I'd never signed off on, but both linked to my ID number and address. "It's probably nothing," she said, "but it triggered a red flag with the development board." I thanked her, heart pounding, and waited until she left before pulling every file I could access. What I found was worse than I imagined. Lara had used my information to secure private development deals through a shell company, under my name. The permits were real. The land use contracts were real. The signatures? Forged. But they'd left just enough room for plausible deniability. That's when I realized getting voted out at dinner wasn't the betrayal. That was the cover-up. The real betrayal had already happened, quietly, long ago. And they'd counted on me being too loyal or too tired to ever notice. But they were wrong. Loyalty isn't blindness, and tired doesn't mean weak. Caleb looked at the documents that night and said, "You still want to build something?" I nodded. But not for them. And not quietly this time. We started with the barn. Not the sleek kind you see on renovation shows with fairy lights and vintage signage. This one was rotting from the beams up, with a roof that groaned every time the wind touched it. But Caleb looked at it like he saw potential, not history. "It's quiet out here," he said one morning as we hauled old wood into the pickup. "You think they'll notice?" I didn't answer, because noticing was never the point. Recognition had gotten me nothing. This time, we were building something that didn't need their approval, or their signatures. We registered under a new name, Marrow Ridge Development. No family ties, no shared tax IDs. I was listed as a silent partner, Caleb as the face. It wasn't out of fear. It was strategy. The less noise we made, the more ground we gained. While Lara filled real estate panels with sound bites about green lifestyle curation, we were buying up the edge parcels they'd overlooked. Flood zones, bad soil, areas their architects called a loss. We weren't just restoring land. We were rebuilding value where no one thought to look. That's where Isabel came back in. She'd left the clerk's office after some disagreements with Veronica, my mother. Turns out Veronica had tried to get permits expedited for Lara's LLC by calling in favors Isabel refused to grant. Now she worked freelance, underpaid, underappreciated, but sharp as glass. Caleb brought her in to help with documentation. She brought something else, a digital trail. Lara had used my name in 5 additional applications, including a federal rural business grant. One of those grants had been denied. The others? Funded and funneled straight into properties that now bore Merrow Ridge's foundation markers. In every public record, it looked like I was investing in both sides. That was the narrative Lara and my parents had built. Victoria, the quiet sister, loyal to family, still involved, just off stage. It gave them cover. It gave me liability. So I erased it. Not loudly, not in court. Just methodically. Paperwork to the state auditor. An anonymous tip to the regional paper. Anonymous, but not untraceable. And then, we built. Merrow Ridge began getting attention. Not headlines, not billboards, but curiosity. The homes were different. Timber-framed with solar-integrated roofs, garden lots, local contractors. Our clients weren't looking for luxury. They wanted roots. And slowly, they started choosing us over my family's firm. That's when Veronica reached out. A forwarded email. "Hope you're doing well. We're looking into a new community project and think your input could be valuable." No apology. Just the expectation that I'd say yes, like nothing ever happened. I didn't respond. I filed it. Because now we were preparing for something bigger. A zoning board vote was coming up. One that would determine development rights over 40 acres of disputed land. My parents and Lara had submitted plans, and so had we. They didn't know we were behind the bid. Not yet. But I wasn't hiding anymore. The rebuild was almost done. Now came the reveal. The thing about fraud is it always leaves fingerprints. Not dramatic ones, not blood-red smudges across a crime scene, just tiny, predictable impressions left by people too arrogant to think they'd ever be caught. Lara was good at spinning stories, and Veronica was even better at pretending they were real. But neither of them understood the kind of meticulous attention I had cultivated after years of working in the shadows. Isabel and I spent 2 straight weekends reviewing digital archives, timestamps, notarizations. At first, it was hard to tell where the legitimate filings ended and the forged ones began. But then patterns emerged. Reused phrasing, repeated typos, wrong middle initials on my signature. I had never spelled my name that way. Caleb looped in a contact from the Office of the Inspector General, someone who owed him a favor. That unlocked records I didn't even know existed. Scanned applications bearing my name submitted from Lara's IP address. Emails requesting disbursement signed by a version of my digital signature I'd never created. The most damning one? A grant for historic land preservation. $175,000 approved last spring, with a check cashed under an account that hadn't existed a year prior. The bank account was tied to a holding company, which Lara had named VFP Group, short for Victoria Frank Projects. My initials, my father's name, my identity. That's when it stopped being about revenge and started being about clarity. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had written me into the story as a willing accomplice. If anything ever collapsed, they could point to the paperwork and say, "She was part of it. She signed everything." But I never did. So I printed every file. I made 3 backup drives. I compiled a report and sent it, quietly, without ceremony, to the County Ethics Committee and the state auditor. Not out of anger, out of necessity. They had created a paper trail that led to me. Now I needed to create one that led right back to them. Caleb didn't say much during those weeks. He just brought tea, ran interference on contractors, and cleared his schedule for the zoning vote. "They'll try to deflect," he warned. "Play innocent." "Let them," I said. "I'm not going there to argue. I'm going there to confirm what they already filed." The vote was set for a Wednesday evening, The proposal from Lara's firm had already made the local news: sustainable luxury cabins, artisan marketplaces, vague promises of community enrichment. Our proposal? Simple, practical, grounded. Isabel would present the final pitch, but I'd be there in person, not to speak, just to witness. Because sometimes silence isn't retreat. Sometimes it's the sound of strategy unfolding. By the time the vote began, 3 committee members had already read the packet I submitted. 2 of them had reached out privately. "Is this real?" one asked. "It's documented," I replied. That was enough. For now. Because the paper trail was no longer a trap they set for me. It had become the map I was using to bring them down. The zoning board hearing was held in the town's old courthouse, a brick building with creaky floors and ceiling fans that buzzed louder than most voices. It was standing room only. Contractors, landowners, realtors, a few camera crews from the local news. I sat near the back, behind a column, not out of fear, but to observe without being observed. Caleb was already up front, speaking quietly with Isabel, who stood beside the projector with a folder under her arm like it held the fate of the entire room. It did. Veronica walked in, wearing navy, her power color. Lara followed in white like she was attending a brand launch, not a legal proceeding. They took their seats at the front, poised and confident. They were first on the docket. Veronica began with practiced ease, mentioning her decades of experience, her community engagement, her family's generational ties to the town. Lara picked up where she left off, talking about vision and preservation and impact. Then came the slides: renderings of cabins, sunlit trails, artisan spaces, polished, beautiful, empty. They finished to light applause. Nothing explosive, just polite, routine approval. The board chair turned to Isabel. "Marrow Ridge Development?" Isabel stepped forward. No theatrics, no flair. She introduced herself, then explained the proposal. It was clean. Affordable housing, minimal displacement, long-term infrastructure. She spoke with steady authority. Then she clicked to the next slide. "Before I go on," she said, "I want to address a conflict that came to our attention." A new document appeared on screen, an application from VFP Group, signed by Victoria Frank. Murmurs stirred. "This filing," Isabel continued, "appears to use a fraudulent signature and a borrowed identity. The tax ID and home address listed belong to a person who was never involved in the VFP project, despite the paperwork indicating otherwise." Gasps now. One board member sat up straighter. Another began flipping through her folder. "To be clear," Isabel said, "this individual, Victoria, was not informed, compensated, or authorized. Yet these documents were used to obtain public funds." Lara shifted in her seat. Her jaw tightened. Veronica's expression froze. "We've submitted all supporting evidence to the auditor's office," Isabel concluded. "For the purposes of this vote, we simply ask that the board consider the integrity of each submission." Silence. Heavy, complete. Then the chair spoke. "Do you have the victim's statement?" Isabel nodded. She clicked once more. A pre-recorded video began to play. It was me, filmed in the barn. I looked straight into the lens. I was never part of VFP. My identity was used without my knowledge or consent. I rebuilt my life outside of that firm, and I do not support their bid. Not because they cut me out, but because they crossed a line. The video ended. The vote was immediate, unanimous. Marrow Ridge received full development rights. Lara stared forward like the floor had disappeared beneath her. Veronica turned slowly to look toward the back. She scanned the room until she saw me. Our eyes met. I didn't flinch. I simply stood and walked out. No words, no gloating, just gravity. They didn't call right away. That would have been too obvious. It took 4 days. First came an email from my mother with the subject line, "Let's talk." No apology, just a dozen sentences trying to downplay what happened. "We were misled," she wrote. "Lara never meant to cause harm." Then, "We can fix this. Together." I didn't reply. Then Lara tried. A text. Short and vague. I didn't think it would go this far. As if identity theft and federal grant fraud were just minor missteps. She followed it with, "We're still sisters, right?" That was the moment I realized she still didn't understand. None of them did. They thought betrayal was a misunderstanding. That being caught was the only wrong they had to reckon with. But what they did wasn't a mistake. It was a strategy. One they expected me to carry in silence. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. There would be no lawsuit. Not because they didn't deserve one, but because I had already won where it mattered. They lost the vote. They lost the town's trust. They lost access to my name. And I wasn't going to give them a second stage to spin their story. Caleb and I moved our office into the finished barn. Marrow Ridge expanded. 2 more projects approved within a month. Isabel joined us full-time. We didn't talk much about what happened. We didn't need to. That chapter had closed. One morning, while the sun was rising through the rafters, Caleb handed me a coffee and asked, "Do you miss them?" I thought about it. About the years I gave up, the loyalty they leveraged, the silence they demanded. "No," I said. "I miss who I thought they were." That weekend, I posted one photo to the Marrow Ridge site, our full team standing in front of the barn, blueprints in hand, soil on our boots, sunlight at our backs. The caption said, "This is how I build now." A week later, I changed my emergency contacts, blocked every number from my old family group chat, and updated my will. Not out of spite, out of clarity. My name was never theirs to borrow. My life was never theirs to erase. And blood? It binds nothing if there's no trust. I didn't destroy them. They did that themselves. I just refused to let them take me down with them. At its core, this story is about one of the deepest wounds a person can experience, being betrayed by your own family, not in an explosive moment of rage, but through quiet manipulation, erasure, and calculated use of your trust. Victoria gave everything, her time, her name, her sacrifice. In return, her sister and parents didn't just cast her aside, they weaponized her stability. They used her identity to build their empire, believing she was strong enough to survive the fallout. And that's where the lesson begins. The greatest betrayals are often wrapped in politeness. Lara didn't scream, she smiled. Veronica didn't stab with words, she softened her tone. And yet, the damage was absolute. This story reminds us that betrayal doesn't always come with fists or fury. It often arrives dressed as family, asking for one more favor, calling it love. And when it happens, your first instinct may be to internalize the pain, stay silent, keep the peace. But silence used wisely isn't weakness, it's strategy. Victoria didn't get revenge by burning everything down. She didn't scream at the dinner table. She didn't even file a lawsuit. Instead, she built something real, something lasting. And then, when the time came, she showed the truth without needing to explain it. That's a rare kind of power, the kind that doesn't demand recognition but can't be ignored. There's also a message here about roles within families. Too often, the strong one is expected to endure everything: neglect, favoritism, even criminal betrayal. Because they're dependable, because they can handle it. But strength should not be an invitation to be used, And loyalty should never mean sacrificing your integrity for someone else's shortcuts. In real life, many of us face these quiet betrayals when siblings take credit, when parents gaslight us into believing we imagined the hurt, when doing the right thing means standing alone. This story urges us to remember, just because you were taught to stay silent doesn't mean you're obligated to. You don't owe anyone access to your name, your peace, or your future, especially those who proved they wouldn't protect it. How to get started today. Audit your boundaries. Who in your life expects loyalty without offering it? Start noticing those patterns. Secure your identity. Make sure your legal, financial, and digital records are in your hands, not family members. Document the truth. Even if you don't speak it today, begin writing things down. Truth is easier to defend when it's clear. Invest in chosen family. Find the people, friends, colleagues, partners, who show up for you without conditions. Build with them. What do you think? Have you ever been the strong one who others used as a shield? How did you take your power back? Or are you still on that path? Let us know in the comments. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if this story hit home, subscribe for more true-to-life, high-stakes stories that remind you, sometimes silence is the sharpest knife.